on Allure or Airbnb
Right.
from afar. And we've got great professionals that'll come in. I mean, we've got cleaners and then handyman and people that, listen, if they have any issues or someone needs to get an extra towel or whatever, we have concierge people that'll come in. So it's amazing what we can do.
That's awesome.
With technology.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
And the nice part about doing something like that is that a lot of people, listen, buying an investment property, you have a number of investment properties.
Yeah.
You don't get to use them, right? When you buy a property in Whistler, you have the opportunity to be able to use it and generate revenue at the same time, which
right.
really is a perfect situation for a lot of people that aren't going to use it every weekend. So someone, right? And you can, I don't think it's going to make you rich by any means.
Yeah.
On the rents, but what it does is it offsets your investment over time, which just might be a longer horizon.
Right.
And as a result, you get to come and use your property for, I don't know what most people, we've done studies here and there, and the average vacation rental property in Whistler will be used anywhere from 24 to 30 days a year by
right.
the owner, and then the rest of the time it's occupied by guests or renters in the resort, which is fantastic.
That's amazing. Are there any particular projects in Whistler that you like for people to, live in either for vacation or real estate invest in or downsize?
So when you say project, I'm assuming you're meaning like complexes, is it correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Or are you thinking, yeah.
Yeah,
okay, cool. Just making sure. Because we call projects in Whistler sort of new builds that are coming on.
Okay.
And so what we end up with is, there's not a lot. There's actually a couple coming up the pipe in the next probably 12 to 14 months that would be a great fit for a lot of people, but we can talk about that later.
Okay.
The complexes, listen, if I always ask people, and it's a bit of a problem-solving thing, how do you see yourself using the property? What's important to you? Because,
right.
Most people want to buy a vacation home. You want to know how they, listen, rent is the most important thing. Okay, well, you know what? Based on that, you want to be close to the hill or you want to be close to the village. You want to have a couple of amenities that are important. Listen, it's funny. We live in a ski town.
Right.
Having a hot tub after a ski is just quintessential, right?
Okay.
So if you have a hot tub in the complex or a hot tub that is, on the deck or whatever, that's an important piece of the puzzle. Our zoning is such that you have to make sure that you have the proper zoning in order to be able to rent your property on a short-term basis.
Okay.
And that was set up, right from the get-go, to make sure that, listen, people living residentially in Whistler weren't stuck living next to people that were here having a good time for the week and, staying up later and making a bunch of noise, right? So we congregate everybody, and it actually works really well. Now, there are people that will do some short-term rentals in residential zones, and most of the time it's fine, but, it's a risk that people take. And so I always tell people, listen, it depends on what type of person you are.
Right.
But you, make sure you have the right zoning for how you're going to use the property. And, listen, sorry, we have, so you asked me what projects, listen.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites, if you're just rental is important. I would say that, Glacier's Reach, anything around the sort of Village North area, which is a little bit out of the village, but still walking distance. Things like Sunpath and Northlands Boulevard are really, really good for rental. And then they're just not too noisy at night. So when you come and use it yourself, it's sort of out of the mix of it all.
Right.
And then anything up on the Blackcomb Benchlands is fantastic too. Listen, Slopeside, Aspens, Painted Cliff are all really, really good properties to be able to just walk out your door and go for skiing. And then if you like a little bit more quieter stuff, going to Creekside, which is the original base of Whistler, that's sort of the ski purists would say, stay out of the village and just go and jump in a complex down there. So there's some stuff down there too.
Awesome. That sounds great. So are there licensing fees for some of the short-term rentals? You were talking about how, it has to be zoned for using a short-term rental, but are there licensing fees or permits that people need to do short-term rentals there?
No, not on it. So because you have the zoning, you're allowed to rent your property nightly.
Okay.
What we do have is something called a tourism Whistler fee. And for every property that has the ability to do nightly rental, you pay a fee per year based on the number of pillows that you have in your property. So a 1-bedroom townhouse would have 2 pillows in the bedroom and 2 pillows in the living room.
Okay.
On a pull-out couch, let's say.
Right.
So you would pay somewhere around, and there's an active fee, and then what they call a non-active fee, which is basically if you have the ability to rent but you decide you're not going to rent it nightly, then you only pay the inactive fee, which is negligible. It's about $250 a year. And then if you're renting it full time, it's about $1,000 a year. And what that does is it allows Tourism Whistler to go out and market the resort worldwide and bring people to the town and the resort to be able to rent to you and whoever else. So it's a great way for us to have all that we have, and it's an extra fee that's added on top of it. It's not like a tax, but similar to a tax.
Right. Interesting. I mean, it's funny because I think there's so many different cities and towns that are grappling with the short-term rental and how to take advantage of it and how to regulate it. So, I think that's really interesting for sure. Yeah,
and it's an interesting thing for us too, because Airbnbs come in and, listen, their regulations are a little different than ours. And, we are grappling with it. Right now, we're doing, our visitation right now is fantastic. It's probably as good as it's ever been.
Right.
And we're having record numbers of visitors. And so everybody's happy and it's okay if you rent your place even though you don't have a zoning. But what'll happen eventually is, you have a neighbor that's just finally, I'm tired of hearing, parties all night or there's ins and outs, and someone's going to start complaining, and then they're going to shut down the properties that are doing it, contrary to the zoning. And so you will get that eventually. But for right now, everybody's happy. So it's all right.
Cool. That sounds great. What kind of price ranges would you see for properties in Whistler? You sort of range from what to what?
So and again, it's such a compartmentalized market, so if we're talking, that there's a single family, and then there's the resident, and then there's the residential single family, and then there's the short-term single family, and then, let's get into townhouses and condos. But generally speaking, a one bedroom in Whistler with a, good location with decent rentals, is going to start you at somewhere around $400,000.
Okay.
And go up as high as 650, depending on where you are and what the property looks like. So that, and from a price per square foot basis, it's probably somewhere between, $750 for the least expensive up to about $1,100 a square foot.
Okay.
And it just depends on which complex you're in and all that, and you can probably extrapolate that through to, 2 and 3 bedrooms. But a 2-bedroom unit, in a decent rental place right now is going to start at approximately $800. Maybe you might get it for just under $800.
Right.
And then they go up as high as, $1 million, $2 million, $3 depending on where you are, and what kind of amenities there are. And then single family homes, listen, not as many short-term rental opportunities there.
Right.
But what we do have is a lot of people that do, they'll do long-term rental, and then, through the time when they're not using it. So again, a lot of people in Ontario, and I didn't say 5 or 6 clients that have cottages. So
right.
What happened was they have these amazing cottages in cottage country in Muskoka. And what they've done is they've kept the cottage and they've sold the house in Toronto, and they bought a place here.
Yeah.
And they come out here for skiing for 4 months of the year. And then they close up and they rent their property through the other 8 months, and then they live at the cottage. And so for them, it's not your short-term rental as much as it is a long-term rental,
right? But
it's a seasonal rental. And there's all sorts of people that will be happy to rent their places in Whistler, and that's another piece of the puzzle that we can get into. But our long-term rental is absolutely. It's amazing right now. And there's just a huge shortage of opportunities for people to rent here.
Right.
So that's another great investment from a Whistler perspective right now.
Awesome. Are there certain areas there that you see are sort of better buys or worse buys, or places that you think if someone is looking for a vacation property there that they should really consider certain areas?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people get so focused on the village and so focused on the slopes that they forget that Whistler's a lot, not huge or anything, not like Toronto, but it's a lot bigger than just the village and the hills. And so your money generally goes a little bit further as you spread out a little bit. And so, I love Blueberry Hill is a great opportunity to be able to get a little bit more for your money. You can still do your nightly rentals, and generally the properties are a little bit larger, so they live better.
Right.
Creekside is definitely, an opportunity to be able to get all those things, but, and then, some of the complexes are a little bit older. And so, adding value in Whistler is a really basic thing to do. And we have all sorts of great contractors and handymen to help you out with that, and designers and stuff. So, one of the best things I tell people that are, buying from just an investment point of view is don't forget the opportunity to be able to add value.
Of course.
Very simply, because when you come to a resort, there's not a lot of people that would want to, they'd rather just have turnkey. And so if you can cater to that, I think you end up making yourself a little bit extra money on the end.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the same thing holds true for investing in Toronto as well. As long as you can add value to the property, that's certainly a really good idea. Are there any sort of changes or improvements coming down the road in the Whistler area?
Well, one of the big things is, the whole Vail thing. So, Whistler Blackcomb has been, they're on a long-term lease basically on the mountain, and they had a 60-year lease that started in 1968, right. And it was at an end, or close to it. I'm sorry, it's 50 years, my bad. And so we're at an end pretty close to now. And so what was happening is that we were in negotiations for re-tenure of the area, and it took forever for the provincial government and Whistler Blackcomb and the First Nations to come to an agreement. And it's actually it's brand new news over the last week. They finally signed the agreement. So that's really solidified everything for Whistler Blackcomb. Right. Which is huge. And then Vail just announced a huge reinvestment. They called it Renaissance Whistler, which it's okay. I don't love the name, but
I hate that name. It's terrible.
Yeah, I know. And it's, listen, you know what? I don't know who it's a marketing name, right? Whatever. and you just have to roll with it. But it's going to be a $345 million reinvestment of both amenities on and off the mountain. They're redoing the base area in Blackcomb, and they're going to be doing a whole weatherproofing of the resort. They're bringing in a huge indoor water park and training facility for athletes to be able to train in the summer and the winter. Wow. There's going to be a mountain roller coaster, and then all sorts of, brand new stuff, new lifts and all sorts of stuff around the mountains. And so, that's a major investment by a large, resort operation that really feels that, Whistler's going to just keep chugging away. And so just to hear a company do that, and listen, it's going to improve the in resort and on mountain experiences for people here for years to come. So that's a major boost coming soon, coming over the next 5 years.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing. What would you say the demographic is of the people in Whistler?
Good question. So as far as, listen, I do a lot of work on just trying to figure out who to appeal to in Denmark. Of real estate, so we spend a lot of time on that. Right. And generally, people purchasing in Whistler are different than the people visiting Whistler. But purchasing, I would say, in ownership here is somewhere between 40 and 65. Okay. And getting a little older as we, there's definitely more retirees in Whistler than there ever has been. Okay. So demographically, I'd say that, it's definitely a younger population. Probably average age in Whistler is somewhere between 45 and 55. Okay. And probably getting, again, depends on who you talk to, but it stays pretty solid depending on what year you're going through, I think. But there's a lot of young people in town. There's a lot of people that come in. It's kind of this really great mix of ages all the way through, and the thing that brings everybody together is the love of the the surroundings and the mountain culture, which is so you could have people that are 75 that are been skiing 60 days a year, they're hanging out with 25-year-olds that, are doing the same thing. And right. That's the cool part about what brings us all together and kind of binds us all, which is really, really special in Whistler.
Cool. Awesome. Is there anything else you think our listeners should know about Whistler and real estate?
I think, the only other thing I would say is that because and this is maybe a plug for agents in the area, but because there's so many different nuances in Whistler, I mean, it's a small market. So there's only 17,000 properties on the residential tax roll. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot to work on, but because there's so many different zonings and there's so many different influences that affect the real estate here, definitely work with somebody that knows the area well. And that's a plug for not just me, but our agents in town here.
Of course.
Just simply because, we get people from Vancouver, the agents from Vancouver that'll try to come up and unfortunately, it doesn't work out as well as it could. So, that would